So it was a celebration for one Rockport family today as they got the keys to their newly rebuilt home. Take a look. Congratulations to them. This is Mr. and Mrs. Leal as they walked into their new home, rebuilt thanks to volunteers with the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group, the Samaritan's Purse, and Mennonite Disaster Service. The family had left for the valley just days before Hurricane Harvey made landfall, only to come back to their Rockport home with no running water or electricity. Well, the Leals said they stayed without power for 12 days until they heard from the Disaster Recovery Group.
Driving, he received a call and he says, they want to help us. And I couldn't believe it. I just looked at him. He said, they want to help us.
And today's home dedication was one of 15 homes helped by the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group and Mennonite Disaster Service, thanks to a $1.17 million grant. And a beautiful day to have that
nice
going
blue
on.
Skies, lots of smiles.
Exactly.
We like all of
yes.
that.